welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today I'm so excited to have another great guest episode to share with you. I had a lovely conversation. It's been a little bit of time ago. I'm so sorry it took a while to get this one out, but I had a great conversation with Toni Akin. Toni is an amazing professional. She got 20 plus years experience in the public sector, public educational field. She started her journey years back growing up in affordable housing in Boston. And this really kind of shaped, I'm going to let her tell her story, but this obviously shaped the whole path of her life and how she came to breaking stigmas on things like affordable housing and care for people who might need a little extra assistance and all things education within the public sector. Again, she tells it much more eloquently than I just did there. So, but Toni is also the current, as of recording date, was the current board director and treasurer of TerraCorps, which focuses on education. And she's also a member of the, I have to look at this, New England Education Opportunity Association. That's a lot. NEOA. So please feel free to look into those. But you will hear her story here in just a moment. I'm so excited for you to hear this. As usual, I would like to remind you that you can help support me and this show by going over to patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. I do some pro bono work out in the community thanks to my Patreon supporters. I would love to be able to provide more services out in the community, kind of limited to, what I can and can't do at this point. But if I could get some more support out there, I can absolutely help out more people who desperately need my help but cannot afford my services. So if you hop on over there, patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula, you'll get early access to this podcast. You will get monthly updates on what I am doing with the funding that I receive from Patreon. I'm always transparent about that. You will get other bonus material. I do Q&As from time to time, things like that. And you'll get grief affirmations in your inbox, all sorts of great stuff. I also will occasionally host workshops online. You'll get discounted rates for any of my workshops. So, and for the duration of season 7, for anybody who joins my Patreon at $10 a month, I will send out one of these journals with the podcast logo on it. Great little thing there. And a sticker if you want a sticker too, maybe a couple. Why not? I got a lot of them. So I'll send that out to you, provided you let me know where to mail them to. That is for the duration of season 7. But enough of that, enough of my blathering. Let's get on to this episode with Toni Akin. All right. Thank you, listeners, so much for coming back again this week. I am so excited to have another super special guest episode. I have a lovely human being, Miss Toni Akin, is going to tell us a little bit about her work and what she does and her journey through all the losses and grief she has suffered and what she has done with that today. So, Toni, would you take just a moment and introduce yourself and tell my listeners a little bit about you and what it is you do?
Thank you, Nikki, so much. Again, my name is Toni Akin. Such an honor to be here with you this afternoon. I've been, using grief as a catalyst to really, get ahead and be productive in my own life and to help others like yourself, because people don't talk about grief as much as they should. It takes courage to do so. And, a bit about me. I've been in the public, sector professionally for almost a quarter of a century now. I've worked both on the federal level, the state level, the county level, the municipal level. And, it's such a rewarding work for me. It's who I am. And, I got into this field because, I come from a long line of teachers, educators, police officers. And my late mother was a staunch advocate for quality public education back in the 1970s. And she fought for quality public education during the bus riot eras. And that was a very tumultuous time. Yeah. And, shortly thereafter, I ended up losing both of my parents. So, I was basically, indigent, homeless, parentless. And, grief really could have, it was a very difficult time. And, I realized that through education and hard work, was a way to improve my life circumstances. So that was part of the process for me. So continuing on with my mother's legacy, my father was also in the Navy. There's a picture of them here.
Yeah.
So really, that's how I was able to get through that period of grief. Continuing on with my education, graduating high school for me was a major factor.
Hmm.
That high school diploma for me was a lifetime achievement.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of resolve. It took community members, my coach, my softball coach was a great support for me.
Hmm.
And it just it's become an issue where I've lost more recently other close people. Like, the biggest loss that I've had was my nephew. He, at the young age of 18, he committed suicide.
Hmm.
And I still struggle with that today, Nikki, because
Yeah.
I always wonder, like, could I have done more? Should I have
Hmm.
been there for him? Was he struggling with his identity? So, that's something that really, sits with me today. And a
Yeah.
reason why I love working with young people through like health and wellness initiatives and
Yeah.
education. And, I served on the school board. I got involved in some of the health and wellness programs. And, it really made a difference to me to know that I could be there for other children. Uh,
Yeah.
and, more recently, I've lost a very dear friend of mine. She was my mentor. It's actually coming up on the 1 year mark that she's passed. She was the therapist for the presidents and for celebrities. And this
Wow.
picture of her here with the former President Bush.
Oh,
And
wow.
she's very modest. She's very modest about her work. She just wanted to help other people heal and feel better about themselves. So I'm carrying on her legacy as well, because
Oh
it
my
just was
gosh.
very inspirational to see that work that she did. And that's basically why I wanted to come on your show, to share my
Yeah.
story, to share my life's work. And
Yeah.
I've used it as a catalyst to move forward and to
Yeah.
help others, hopefully, because I think
Yeah.
my story, if it can help one other person, then I've done, I feel like I've done a good job.
Yeah. I say that too all the time with this podcast. I'm like, if one person hears an episode and it resonates with them or makes them feel comforted, then that's all worth it for me. Um, so there's a lot of little things I want to unpack in here, but and I'll put a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode before we dive in about, mentions of suicide. But I've had some people on the show before who have lost friends or loved ones to suicide, and it's one of those deeply stigmatized deaths. And it's complicated because there's usually almost always there's mental illness involved or some type of, addiction, which a lot of times is because of a mental illness. And then everybody's afraid to talk about it and they're afraid to mention it and like it's whispered. And I hate that. I'm not saying we have to scream it from the mountaintops, but at the same time, so getting to my question, do you feel like, with the loss of your nephew at such a young age from suicide, did you experience a lot of that? Was there a lot of like whispering behind hands and like kind of a stigmatized manner about that, if that makes sense?
It does, actually, and it's something that in my immediate family, we no longer talk about it. I mean, they're probably going to see this podcast and be upset about it. But we don't talk about it because
Okay.
I've seen my siblings really become almost despondent.
Yeah.
It's something that for myself, I've been able to carry on with that message to young people or to anybody. That if you're feeling suicidal, if you're
Right.
feeling you can't go on, you can contact me directly. That's how serious I am about this, because I just feel that um,
Yeah.
that grief is, it changes, it
Does.
fluctuates, and to try to use that time to, you know, uh, reflect upon yourself. So,
Right.
it got to a point in our family, whereby we didn't speak about Gary Jr. We didn't speak about what happened. And as I say, I do think he was struggling with his identity, like so many young people do today.
Sure.
And I think that's a big factor today with young people that, they don't feel accepted, they don't feel welcome, they don't feel safe.
Hmm.
Uh, and, I can say I've been there, having lost my parents as a teenager. As I say, I was on the brink of being homeless. I was indigent. I
Yeah.
was, I had friends that didn't have my best interests and getting into nefarious activities and
Yeah.
blaming me because I was an easy person to blame. I grew up in one of the most notorious housing developments in New England.
Oh, wow.
And, just that whole, 1970s bus riot era, so,
Yeah.
a lot of people, were coming after my mother and then now by coming after me. So,
Yeah.
I think that we have to talk about suicide in terms of how to prevent it, how to be more
Right.
supportive, to people and address that mental health, wellness factors. And I've had so many young people come up to me and parents calling me and I just welcome that. Like I said, I
Yeah.
that's part of my work in public office. I
Hmm.
also serve currently as a housing commissioner here in Providence. So, sometimes I get calls from people that are on the verge of being homeless,
Hmm.
and they ask for help on how to apply for applications for the housing or how to,
Yeah.
be put on a waiting list or, do sharing apartments or what have you. So
Hmm.
I'm always constantly, trying to help with that too, because, without how, everybody deserves a
Right.
home. So
Right.
that's another factor that's rising today with, people's health and wellness
Yeah.
we need to address. And I think that's another factor,
Absolutely.
why we're
I,
seeing perhaps suicide rates
yeah.
increase. If you don't have a home, you can't live
Right.
properly. So, it's something that we all need to work collaboratively with each other, come up with different ideas, come up with different social models, come up with different investment models, capital models, and really bridge the two. So that's my goal
Yeah.
as well.
Oh, I could not agree with any of that more. And I had a couple thoughts while you were talking about very similar aspects. So a frustration I always had, like I said, we stigmatize when somebody dies by suicide, overdose, things like that. But what frustrates me the most is like, especially if somebody dies young or unexpectedly, the big question is why, how, like what happened, what caused their death? Everybody wants to know that. And I'm one of those, it's not really your business unless that information is given to you. But I also understand our human curiosity. But the problem with that is, and I think part of where that stigma comes in, is then that person is known for that. And we are so much more than our death. Our death is just a fraction of our life, right? It's just like our birth was a thing that happened. Our death is a thing that happens at the other end. But there's a whole life leading up to that. So your nephew had 18 years of things before this. But especially when it comes to situations like mental illness and being unhoused and, economic insecurity, things like that, like those can lead up to these things. And we don't see that aspect. We just see, oh, they were unwell and they took their own life, or they were unwell and they started using drugs or alcohol and then they died of overdose. And if we're not looking at those root causes, we're looking at the outcomes. Am I talking in circles?
Oh, absolutely. No, you're making total sense. And
Yeah.
exactly. Those are the subject matters that I really want to focus on, socially and
Yeah.
publicly
Yeah.
and in the private sector too. I think that,
Yeah.
a lot of people, they think, oh, you're a socialist, you're this, or that. And it's like, well, no, I'm not, because I'm also, I also am my own business owner. And
Right.
I believe in, capitalist, adventures and in business models. So I
Yeah.
think it's a really cumulative, way that, we need to bridge those two modalities
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
and, just have a better quality life for everyone, at least a
Yeah.
shot at that, because I think that, we can all look at our, like I say, death and grief is a part of life.
Yeah.
It's, we all will face that. And, it's about what your legacy and what you want to leave behind. And I
Right.
think that could also be another factor in addressing, those very same things that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. And I had a thought, it escaped me. That's okay. It'll come back at the most inopportune time. Uh, so you had mentioned earlier that you lost your parents at kind of a young age. Is that correct?
Yes,
Do you feel
yes.
open to discussing that a little
Oh,
bit?
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
I lost my parents. I lost both my parents as a teenager. There's
Oh my
pictures of
gosh.
me and my mother and my father. They were married for over 50 years.
Oh wow.
They had me late in life, though. They couldn't have children younger, so they had children later in life.
Hmm.
So if they died relatively young, they had both had cancer, and unfortunately, they passed in their early 60s. And I was still a teenager, as I say, I was still
Yeah.
in high school. So, they both valued education greatly. My mother, they still talk about her work that she's done in Boston,
Really?
with the busing initiatives. She had worked with the governor
Hmm.
Dukakis, and she had worked with Mayor White at that time frame. So she was, a real pivotal person in shaping. She felt like it was a parent's right to send their children to any school that they wanted, and I still believe that today.
Yeah.
She did a lot of great work on the public platform.
Yeah.
And my father, he walked to school. He grew up poor on a farm in Kentucky. He walked to school every day for 6 miles every day barefoot to go to school. So that's how important education was to him. And then
Yeah.
he went off and joined the Navy when he graduated high school. So again, he had a lot in the public sector that, you know,
Yeah.
it just was very inspirational to me. So at that time frame, my grandmother helped raise me. She was Italian, and she didn't speak too much English, and I had to learn Italian. She had to learn a little bit of English, and she, wanted me. She was very resolved that I graduated high school and I go to college. Well, like I say, barely finished the high school graduation, which I felt like was one of my lifetime achievements.
Yeah.
But going to college, I really didn't, I had to support myself. So I used my high school diploma that I had in the business field, which I received with high honors.
Yeah.
And I started out like bookkeeping and office management and, worked my way up. And, everybody, all my employers were like, we really want you to go back to school and, get a degree so you could get into management. And that's exactly what I did. And
Hmm.
I then went to work on the federal level as a contractor. And my work was recognized by the US Army for the work on the asset tracking platform.
Wow.
So that was a very early award that I
Hmm.
got, another lifetime achievement. And it just motivated me further with my father serving in the Navy.
Yeah.
It was very just culminating for me.
Yeah.
And then I just kept staying working in the public sector.
Yeah.
As soon as I completed my degree, I wanted to work in schools to help other students stay focused with their education
Yeah.
because I knew how important it was
Yeah.
for myself. And that's when I started working in schools and worked for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, worked here in Rhode Island, different schools and different types of schools.
Hmm.
And what I found too with that was that all the students were all struggling. They're all the same,
Yeah.
no matter what they were studying.
Hmm.
And they needed that support. They needed that support that I could give them to stay focused, stay motivated, to complete their own studies.
Yeah.
And that's when students started coming up to me and telling me, that they were struggling, not just with their studies, but personally. They were
Yeah.
struggling maybe with their personal identities, or their home life wasn't safe, or they, didn't have a home to
Right.
go to. So, that's when I knew I was on the right path.
Yeah.
that God put me here, to continue my parents' legacy in that work. And my work is now recognized by the Rhode Island Department of Education, which is a more recent award. So, it's just so, it's just so motivating to me.
Yeah.
And, as a housing commissioner, I just feel like public housing, public education, they
Yeah.
go hand in hand with, just improving quality of life for
Absolutely.
everybody. So,
Yeah.
growing up in a housing development myself as well, I just feel like it's coming full circle for me in that regard. But,
Yeah.
it is a struggle. And I think that there's a lot, you talk about, on with suicide, with people, struggling, with that. And, I see that even in the low income housing platforms, because, people think, people that grow up in the projects are uneducated, they're nefarious, they're troublemakers, they have this not in my backyard mentality, and that's so far from the truth. So, that's another reason why that it's just, full circle for me with my parents.
Yeah. I love hearing stories like yours. And, we were chatting a bit before we started too, like how, like I had my own series of losses and that propelled me into what I do, especially with this podcast, because I've seen like how we're just not having conversations about grief and loss. And you saw firsthand, the impact of education and, support as far as housing and use that to propel you forward too. And I just want to say I appreciate that for you and for all, anybody who not gets to, but survives something difficult and uses that to propel them forward instead of pulling them down.
Agreed.
So I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I mentioned before we started recording, and we are in a serious, like housing. Well, most of the United States is in a housing crisis, and it's really bad here. And our housing market has gone, it's just exploded, and we're losing affordable housing, which is something I've always felt passionate about. I have friends that are, working on that as well. But would it be fair to you to say that lack of resources and a lack of ability to find an affordable home for people who cannot afford to go out and spend $400,000 on an apartment, that this is in and of itself its own form of grief around, how do I want to phrase this? Like, I don't know, it's just a grief of that economic insecurity. Does that seem fair to you to say?
That seems very fair. There's two parts of this equation, though, Nikki. There's, the high cost of living, the high cost of housing, and then the public, housing is, like I mentioned,
Right.
not being expanded upon in many areas. In Providence, I'm actually proud that we do have a lot of public housing stock here. I'm very proud of that. But I think the other factor is the private sector. I think, we have, the high cost of rents,
Yeah.
the high cost of, utilities and maintenance. So I think, like I said, I think these two modalities need to work more
Yeah.
together in a formula that's more equitable
Mhm.
for all of us, because it's going to get to a point where, even the middle class, middle income, and, even higher income people, we're all going to have affordability issues if we
Right.
don't come up with a plan, for housing. And actually, that's something that I've worked with, here in Providence, is for the consolidated plan, is coming up with ideas. Some of my ideas are a little bit lofty, and I
Okay.
know that, maybe too much burdensome on the public sector. Like, what I would love to
Sure.
see here in Rhode Island is to have for elderly, a retirement community
Yeah.
that's public
Yes.
sector.
Yes. Thank you.
And there's only one in here in New England, and that's in Nantucket.
Hmm.
So, they're a little bit there. It's a 45 bed facility, they have a
Yeah.
little bit higher taxes, and they have more equity there, more wealth there.
Right.
But that's something that I would love to see expanded here in Rhode Island, as we'd be the first actually in New England, or second in New England to do that. But I think that's so important, and I think
Yeah.
that in the private sector, I think for private owners, they're feeling the burden because of all the government regulations that
Sure.
they're having to endure. Which, by the way, I've also have that's part of my business model is rental services. So I can
Okay.
speak out of experience for that. So that crunch has to get, has to get less
Mhm.
restrictive, because private landlords are getting the brunt of, having to, have all these regulations and the higher taxes, and,
Yeah.
the utilities and the maintenance. So they can no longer offer lower,
Yeah.
affordable houses. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it really, as I say, that's something I'm working with the consolidated plan on doing that, as well as, looking at some, other features as well for people with disabilities. Let's say
Yeah.
people that, maybe having, diseases like HIV and AIDS,
Mm.
giving them, further support, because that's coming back
Yeah.
too. It's getting stronger in terms of, more people getting infected
Yeah.
with that. So looking at other ways, not just for helping low income, but, middle income and even higher income people, so that we can all work collectively
Yeah.
and, bridge those models of
Yeah.
public, private,
Hmm.
and, just better quality of life all around.
Yeah. I would love to. So I'm curious your thoughts on this because I don't have the knowledge that you do. I know very little about, city planning and any of that. And I've talked to some other people about this. I watched this mini documentary once. They did an experiment, and I still can't remember. I think it was in Norway. It was Norway or Sweden, and they had a housing, like an apartment building, and they kind of did a little bit of that. It was a little bit of public and a little bit of private
Oh,
sector coming
oh,
together
oh my
to
God.
help fund it, and it was for college students and the elderly, and they had both of them in the same apartment complex.
Oh,
And their
great.
thought was these are two communities that have limited income, and they can absolutely benefit from each other. And it was a huge success because the students were learning so much from all their neighbors, who had lived through all of that part of their life. And the elderly that were living there had younger people to A, make them feel more youthful, because spending time with younger people does help your energy level, but also help them with like tasks around the house that they couldn't do anymore. And it was just the fact that somebody sat down and said, hey, there's two communities that could really benefit from each other. Let's put them together and see what happens. And it worked.
I love that model. I would love to learn more about it if you
I know
can.
I have to find that. If I find it, I'm going to send it to you.
Yes,
Because
please.
it's driving me crazy that I can't remember where it was. But like, yeah, I don't know. I would love to see, and because you had mentioned something about, retirement
Yes,
communities and
yes,
retirement areas.
yes.
We're like everybody keeps saying we're on the edge. I think the silver tsunami is already here. Our aging population is enormous. The baby boomer generation is huge. And there are more of them than there are caregivers, and they're going to start needing places to go.
Yes.
And we don't have
Absolutely. And
it.
that's, like I say, I'm coming up with some plans and designs,
Yeah.
especially for that. I love that model that you're just
Yeah, I have to
explaining.
find that.
And I want to learn more. I want to know where that's being developed, because, that's what it takes. It takes thinking outside of the box, and looking at ways to, just being creative,
Hmm.
looking at innovation as a way to, improve these circumstances. Because
Yeah.
going back to your first question about the high cost of living and the high cost of homes,
Hmm.
first time buyer programs, there's a
Hmm.
lot to do with that. But there's also, some of those programs on a federal level that are now in jeopardy. It's called the home program. And that's what I'm advocating on a federal level, that particular program stay intact, because that's the only program that is offered on a federal level that allows home ownership, with some type of loans that they have,
Yeah.
that it's like you say, it's pot, privately funded, not publicly funded,
Yeah.
and it remained steady throughout, like, its inception, in terms of funding. And now that it could be eradicated. So looking at those programs and trying to keep the best functioning, tweak, the ones that need assistance, like some of the voucher programs, uh,
Yeah.
might need a little bit of tweaking and revamping. I understand that. But I think, I'm a little taken aback with the latest, reports from Washington about, the citizenship factor, because that's going to trickle down on a private level too. For private landlords, that's going to be even more burdensome.
Yeah.
So that's going to just increase the
Yeah.
homelessness factor in my mind.
Yeah.
So it's always been there, that citizenship
Mhm.
factor, but now they're going to enforce it on a federal level.
Mhm.
And I think it's going to trickle down into the private sector
Yeah.
for private landlords. So these things have to be looked at from different lenses. And
Yeah.
I think that love hearing all these new initiatives and new.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's what's been working isn't working. And we need to, you just said it, we need to think outside the box. And I think that's not easy for everybody to try to come up with a brand new idea. Like, hey, maybe this might work, and I get it. It's scary, but yeah. Okay, so I have a little tradition on my podcast where when we get closer towards the end of the episode, I pull a random card from the death deck. It's conversation starter questions about death and dying. So I'm going to pull a random card from here and I'm going to let you answer the question and then I will answer the question. So, um, oh my gosh. All right. So this is about terminal illness. Which fate do you fear the most? A, something unpredictable like cancer. B, something instant like a heart attack or stroke, or C, something mentally debilitating like Alzheimer's.
Well, for myself, Nikki, I don't fear death. I mean,
Me
that's,
neither.
I've had too many close calls with death of my own self. And it's a part of life that we all have to go on. I think, it's God's plan for me.
Yeah.
I think that, I think for me, I think the last one would be the most, for me, the
Hmm.
most concerning, having that mental
Yeah.
liquidity, lacking.
Yeah.
Um, because I'm such a, I am always reading, always researching. I consider myself, scholarly in that regard. So I think for
Yeah.
me, that would be the most, concerning, but it's God's plan.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
I'm not afraid of what's in store. And I
Mhm.
think that for me, it's, I'm in my late 50s now, and, my time is of essence. And that's why I'm working so hard to, for my legacy, for my parents' legacy,
Yeah.
for the people that I've lost, that legacy to continue on, because when we leave, not being remembered, I think
Yeah.
is the most major
Yeah.
loss for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with everything that you said. I see like the last one is my answer as well. I don't I've been around death a lot now with given what I do. And it is just a part of life. I still get scared. Of course, we all do. But I also recognize that it's as beautiful and as, similar to birth. It's another transition in our lives. So
Agreed.
okay. So now we're getting towards the end. Thank you for your time, but I want to give you some time. The platform is yours. If you had one piece of like thought or advice or anything that you want to share with the public, this is your opportunity.
No, I thank you so much, Nikki, for, inviting me on and help, sharing my story. And I think that for anyone that's listening right now, anyone that's going through grief, just know that you're not alone. That sometimes grief can become your fuel.
Yeah.
To carry on, to use it as a catalyst to move forward. And, I've lived it. I'll continue to live it. I'm here. If anybody needs to contact me, I can put my contact information about, if anybody is, thinking of hurting themselves, please,
Yes.
just know, somebody cares about you. And that's me. I care about every single person on this earth. We're all brothers and sisters. We all have to love each other. That's how I grew up with my parents. That's what they taught me. So if my story can give one person hope, then I know that I've done my best, and I carry these scars and help others with that as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Toni. So, I will put any information Toni has for contacting her in the description or links or whatever wherever you're listening to, watching this. It will be down there, so you can feel free to reach out to her or to me. I too love you. I was a volunteer at the suicide hotline for like 4 years. It's a huge passion place for me. And I wish I could get everybody in the world to understand that somebody out there really does care. So
thank you.
Yeah. All right, Toni, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and sharing all of that with my listeners. I really appreciate all of this.
I appreciate Nikki as well.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
All right, another huge shout out and thank you so much to Toni for coming on my show and talking bravely about your story, your history, where you are now, and all the things that happened in the middle there. Thank you so much. You can find information on Toni down in the show notes, how you can get in touch with her, any other information you might want. If you want to get in touch with me, that information is there too, but you can always run on over to nikkithedeathdoula.com. That is the best, most robust place to get information on me. Reach out to me, information on this podcast. I have a whole page on there, on that website devoted just to this podcast. You can find links to my guests. You can find the books from guests that have been on the show and other great stuff there. You can also get merch. So if you want to buy one of these journals, you can do that. I've got t-shirts, mugs, stickers. Another way to get one of these great journals, if you go on to patreon.com/NikkiTheDeathDoula for the duration of season 7, any new patrons at the $10 a month tier, I will send out a journal and a sticker or 2 or 4, whatever you want. I will send that out to you. And I would love to have that support. Again, all of that funding goes to me providing pro bono support within my community and where I am able. So thank you so much. If you have a story you would like to share, please go to nikkithedeathdoula.com/podcast or just reach out to me. I would love to have a conversation with you, much like all of these wonderful conversations I have here. If you really enjoyed this episode or any of my episodes, please leave me a rating and review wherever you are listening. That is a simple 2-second thing you can do. That is a huge support to me or any other podcast you listen to. So please do that. Thank you so much for tuning in again this week. And remember, as always, your grief is yours, your feelings are valid, and grief doesn't always have to suck. Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula is produced by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC in Columbus, Ohio. Nikki the Death Doula LLC is for consulting, education, emotional support, and guidance, and is no way considered a funeral establishment or licensed mental health establishment. Scripts, editing, sound design, literally everything with this podcast is done solely by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC, with the exception of the music. The music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. Licensing information can be found at filmmusic.io.